Hello and welcome. People on this show are guaranteed to have interesting lives that make a sharp impact on our times. My guest today is no different. His life has turned upside down in the past 3 months, 52 days of which he has spent in Tihar jail as one of the main accused in the cash for votes case of 2008. If you remember, that scandal implied that the UPA-1 government had survived the no confidence motion against it on the Indo-US civil nuclear deal by buying support from MPs from other parties. Please welcome former BJP member and columnist Sudheendra Kulkarni. Mr. Kulkarni, good to have you on this show.
Thank you.
What happens next? Because all the accused in this case, which includes you, which includes Amar Singh, which includes Sanjeev Saxena, his former aide, 2 BJP MPs, Suhail Hindustani, a BJP worker. What happens next? You are all out on bail. Where does this case go next?
The case will go in the direction of trial, and we hope that the trial begins soon and goes to its logical conclusion. I have absolutely no doubt that our innocence, I am talking about those who acted as whistleblowers, our innocence will be conclusively established.
You say logical conclusion. Is it possible to get to the logical conclusion? And by that I mean the source of that money that was given to the BJP MPs 3 years after the incident happened?
Of course, that only goes to show that those who have the responsibility to investigate have not done the job well. You know, we are not expected to investigate. There is an official investigating agency, and they must go to the bottom of it, find out where the money came from, why the money came from, who were the ultimate beneficiaries, and what was the motive. And that is what I mean by logical conclusion, because already our whistleblowing operation has unmasked the fact that horse trading took place.
In 2008, the Parliament appointed a committee. We know that 2 members in that committee put dissenting notes, but a clean chit, the case was closed for all practical purposes. It has got revived largely technically because of the PIL filed by former Chief Election Commissioner Mr. Lingdo, and then the Supreme Court's directive. Do you feel that at some level maybe it should have been buried where it was in 2008?
I want to really express a sense of gratitude towards the Honorable Supreme Court, because it's only because of the Supreme Court's intervention that this case, which had been buried, has been in a way excavated.
This is despite the fact that you are now an accused and allegedly have masterminded the whole thing and spent 52 days in jail.
Let trial take place. As I have said, if the trial goes in the right direction, and I have absolutely no doubt that the judiciary will play a fair and independent role, my innocence will be established. But what I am saying is that it took the Supreme Court's intervention for the case to move on and at least bring it to this stage. The investigative agency can still find answers to the question that you asked just now.
You call it whistleblowing, other people call it entrapment. There are media reports which suggest that the reporter at the heart of the sting operation and that there are recorded conversations which seem to suggest that the MPs involved and Suhail Hindustani, one of the party workers involved, actually spent a lot of time trying to hawk themselves and get people to make that offer, isn't it? So how do you counter this argument of entrapment that has been made against you?
Please go through the order of the Honorable Delhi High Court.
The bail order. I've seen it.
In which it is very clearly stated that the MPs did not take bribes. They did it in order to expose horse trading, and they have also stated that Suhail Hindustani's role was also that of a whistleblower. Of course, this is a bail order. It is not order on trial.
It's not the judgment. Yes, yes.
But what I would like to say is that entrapment and bribe giving cannot go together. The charge sheet itself says that bribe was given. Now, in this particular case, the bribe giving was genuine, bribe taking was virtual. They did not take a single paisa themselves. They immediately went and deposited that money in front of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. That shows that the intention was not to make illegal gain out of this. And therefore, those who are trying to obfuscate this matter by saying, oh, this is entrapment, they don't want the truth to come out.
Through these last 3 months, especially since you were asked to present yourself in court and then being remanded to Tihar jail, there was a lot of support that the BJP provided at that point. Mr. L.K. Advani, going so far as to say that arrest me for wrongdoing, because if this is wrongdoing, I am guilty as leader of the party then. You also have, after you were released on bail, Nitin Gadkari felicitating you, Sushma Swaraj there at a function. The question is, does this suggest that Sudheendra Kulkarni is back in the BJP fold, because this is a party that you left, isn't it, in 2009?
Yeah, but when this whistleblowing operation took place, when we tried to expose this cash forward scandal in July 2008, I was very much an activist of the party, and this entire exercise was conducted with a full knowledge and in fact approval of the party leadership, and which is why Advani ji said in Parliament that if our MPs are guilty, then I am guilty because I authorized them and therefore arrest me. Has any leader in the history of Indian Parliament shown the courage to challenge the government to arrest him like this? This itself goes to show that this was not some freewheeling operation of Sudheendra Kulkarni and a few people. It was a very wealth, because if members of parliament are purchased like this by paying them crores of rupees, what is the sanctity of our democracy? We did this so that no corrupt politician, leader in future ever does the same again. And if for this we had to go to jail, I am not at all feeling sorry that I had to go to jail. Not at all.
How do you answer my question, which is that does it suggest that Sudheendra Kulkarni gets back into the BJP fold?
No, I am very happy.
Now,
I am very happy that the BJP leadership stood by us throughout this period, before we went to jail, during our stay in jail, and also after. So, I am really grateful to the party leadership. Whether I'll go back to the BJP formally, time will tell.
You're currently an ideologue with an ideology, but with no party and people to execute it, isn't it? That must be pretty frustrating.
Every political activist, goes through a process of soul searching. And there is always a struggle within oneself on the path one has chosen, whether it's the right path. And you see, there are always twists and turns. To think that politics has to be a straight path is to not know politics. Now, I have tried to stay truthful to my convictions. Even when I left the party formally, it didn't mean that I left my association with the party leadership, because it is they who inspired me in some way, whether it is Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, Advani ji, to join the party and work full time for 14 years. So I may have had some differences at some point in time, but now all I can say is that I will be back in politics, active politics. In what form? Let's see.
In 2009, when you left, one of the things you said was that the BJP was in a disarray. It seemed to be drifting. You had asked for the relationship with the RSS to be recast and a lot of changes or reforms that you would like to see. Do you feel in 2011 that the BJP has significantly managed to get its house in order from, let's say, since compared to 2009?
Absolutely. Anybody, don't look at the BJP, from the time it was in 2009 or earlier. In the past 2 years, what I have seen is that there is a significant improvement in cohesion and unity at various levels. In the past 2 years, those who have seen this party closely know that it is moving, I think, in the right direction, and India needs a very strong opposition party. Otherwise, we can't allow this Tina factor to go in favor of the Congress again and again and again, in spite of their horrible performance.
You mentioned that you spent about 16 years working with the BJP and you joined because of the leadership. You worked very closely with Mr. Vajpayee, our former Prime Minister. How is he doing? When was the last time you managed to see him?
Yeah, I met him before I went to Tihar jail.
You did?
Yeah, of course he's not in good health, and that's a matter of deep concern for all, not just those in BJP, but
yes.
He was somebody who was liked, who is still liked by people across social barriers, political, ideological barriers, and he is not in very good health. We now realize, I can say for myself, what it takes to govern a large country like ours with immense diversities. One has to be patient, one has to be tolerant, one has to be respectful towards dissent, because we cannot, no party can think of governing this country on its own. So therefore, this dream of the Congress party that one day will once again become will form a single party government with the kind of majority that Rajiv Gandhi and Indira Gandhi enjoyed, that's gone.
What was it like
we have to learn to work together, not only in the ruling establishments, not only in the opposition alliance, but even between opposition and the government.
Right.
And this principle was an article of faith for Vajpayee ji.
In the time that you have spent in Tihar jail, you have articulated, what that experience was like. What was the key takeaway for you of that period, of that experience?
The greatest learning that I had, and in fact for this purpose, I would like to thank the government for sending me to jail, is that I learned the serious problems, shortcomings in our criminal justice system firsthand. We don't realize how terrible the state of our criminal justice system is. I'll give one instance. Tihar has a population of about 14,000 prisoners. 75% of them are under trials. Just a few days ago, I learned that a person in the so-called high-risk ward was acquitted, and he had spent 4 years. In my own ward, I had inmates 5.5 years, even their trial hasn't begun, and they have been in jail on official secrets, official secrets case. Isn't this a blot?
This is the naval officer you've written
yes,
about, yeah.
Isn't this a blot on our nation, a claim to be a law-governed country? How can we allow this to go on? And our case gets some media highlight because we are so-called political personalities. There are thousands of poor people. Do we care for them? So reforming India's criminal justice system is the biggest lesson that I learned in Tihar jail.
You also sort of referred to the fact that you discovered the need and the role that silence and solitude plays in sort of refining your own internal thoughts and being, isn't it? And you actually referred to teachings of or the experiences that Mahatma Gandhi and Sri Aurobindo have shared at that time when they were incarcerated. What is it that you mean by this solitary, the need for solitude and silence?
In normal life, we have almost lost the experience of living with ourselves. We have forgotten the value of solitude. Of course, being in jail is enforced solitude. It's not voluntary solitude. Nevertheless, when circumstances, even though I am innocent, circumstances sent me to jail, I began looking at my own condition with a certain inward focus. Most people turn inward, and most people also turn towards God. I have been a believer in God for many years.
And a complete non-believer for many years before that.
Yeah. When I was a communist. But jail made me stronger in my faith in God. And in this, I have written in my article that I made good use of the jail library, and I spent a lot of time reading the works of Mahatma Gandhi and Aurobindo.
So you're saying that your experience was similar, or are you saying that your experience has helped you understand what they meant better?
What I mean is that I'm not a yogi. I mean, I know my imperfections, but solitude, makes you look at your imperfections, and also solitude makes you look more closely at the imperfections in society, and therefore, what is your own role? If I am a political activist, then I have a duty to change this system.
Which is why you need to get back into active politics.
Exactly, and therefore, my jail experience has in fact reinforced my conviction that I have to be active in politics, because politics is the agency through which, if proper efforts are made and collectively made, you can bring about change.
You just mentioned that you used to be a communist. Can you explain to us why a trained engineer began his political life as a card-carrying communist and then careened completely to the extreme right of the spectrum?
I don't really view left and right in the way people do, because even in the BJP, there have been ideologues, who have spoken of the need for transforming India into an egalitarian society as strongly as some of the leftist ideologues. Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay, the great guide and philosopher of the BJP, you should read his book, Integral Humanism. I don't see this as a rightist treatise at all. He is as much of a socialist as anybody else, but socialist from an Indian point of view, not the Marxist-Leninist point of view. I was a communist, but I realized that Indian communism is not rooted in Indian soil. They reject our whole rich spiritual cultural tradition. They have only negative things to say about Hinduism and Hindu society. Whereas I have visited many communist ruled countries, and I could see, the propaganda and the reality was very different. And that opened my eyes, and I started reading great philosophers, thinkers like Mahatma Gandhi, Aurobindo, Swami Vivekananda, and I realized that in India, we have to follow the Indian path.
Do you think, when you joined the BJP and when Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister and was leading the BJP, the party drew to itself and attracted a lot of middle class, intellectual people. Do you think it still has that kind of cachet or that kind of attraction with this community?
I think that the party has to make very vigorous efforts to once again establish that connect with the educated youth. We tend to think that they're all careerists and they don't care about, that's not true. They're highly patriotic, but they are also, they are independent minded. They are looking at all political parties from a critical perspective. Nevertheless, being patriotic, being nationalistic, I think they can be won over by a party like the BJP. Of course, every single party has to make an effort, and that will add to the vibrancy of our democracy. That will bring the real youth energy into our democracy and development. Today, there is a certain disconnect between the youth and the political process. This is not good for our country.
Which is why Anna Hazare and his movement finds that vacuum to fill, isn't it?
You see the kind of spontaneous response that his movement got. Had anyone imagined that this is the way that our students and youth would respond, all non-political, but a very strong show of idealism.
Mr. Kulkarni, we hear you loud and clear. You're not saying it, but you said that you want to be back in active politics, and the BJP still is a party that you prefer. So, reading between the lines, I guess we can see you back in action soon. Thank you very much for your time. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.